My name is Adrionna Lewis, and my story is about how I was molested by an older cousin. Growing up, I had two cousins. 1996 or 1997, when my mom was pregnant with me, their mom was killed. She was killed by the NYPD. And so at that point, they went with their mom's side of the family. Their mom's mom wasn't alive. They just wound up going on that side. And so whenever they became teenagers, about 14, 15 years old, it was brought to my mom and her twin sister attention that they were needing some assistance with them and that they wanted to send them down. They were supposed to be coming down for the summer at first. When they got here, things were a little different. They were telling us things about their aunt on their mom's side, and they were saying how she just was doing all of these terrible things to them. And so my mom and my aunt, they wound up taking him in. My aunt wound up taking him and his sister at first, and then some things happened, and he wound up coming to stay in where we live. And so whenever he got here, he was a teenager, and so my mom and her sister just kind of helped taking care of them. At that time, I believe I was probably about 11 when they got down here, probably about 11. So the abuse didn't start too much longer after that. It started off with just touching and everything. And then it went deeper, obviously, because I had a child from it. So when I was 11 years old, a male cousin of mine came down from New York to live with us. And the abuse started soon after that. And I believe I was in about the fifth or sixth grade. Up until this point, him and his younger sister were living with their mom's side of the family. And so the sister wound up staying with my aunt. He wound up staying with us. And from there, that's when the abuse started. He didn't have any problems. Everyone seen him as sweet. Everyone seen him as a good person. Nobody thought that he would do anything like that. They thought the aunt was lying. They thought that, like the aunt was just treating him bad, but he never acted like aggressive. He never really had fights and stuff at school like that. Never really in trouble. We are actually originally from New York, so we don't have much family down here, but the family we do have, we was all really close-knit. And everybody, really was always around each other. Whenever I was 11 and he moved in, I could tell that things were different, like versus my other, because I have another male cousin, but versus him, it was just different. It was touchy, kind of always on me, in my face. And mind you, I was younger than him, about 5-6 years younger than him. I would say he would try to be alone with me a lot, try to close the door, because I do have other sisters. I do have cousins. Like we were all kids at the same time. So it was a lot of us. And so, he would just try to get me alone a lot. Now as an adult, I could look back and realize that it was grooming and it wasn't normal. But as a kid, I didn't realize it at the time. I thought, we're all just close. And I didn't realize that he was doing what he was doing until it was actual, like you could tell, okay, this is not right. I believe I was around 12. And at that time, he had like video games in his room. And so, we would play the video game. Even with all of the kids around, he would try to, get them out, close the door. And it was like he would stop us from playing the video game to like try to be sexual. I feel like I've really blocked out a lot of things, but I know that back then, whenever he would do things, it would be like stuff leading up. First he would start with the touching, and then he would start with like coming and laying beside me, like putting himself in my area. It was like he was taking steps, like grooming. He was taking steps leading up to actually being sexual. And at this time, he had the game in his room. We were playing the game. And, he stopped the game because he wanted to be sexual. And at that time, you're a kid, you don't really think about things like how it is. In this specific incident, I remember being a kid. I remember being alone. My mom and my stepdad actually went out to like a date, and they had, stayed at a hotel, spend the night out, and it was just me, him, my sisters, and my grandmother. And we happened to be in the same room as my grandma. I remember him being in the room with me and my grandma. I don't know if he did that purposely so he could do what he did, but I do remember us all being in the room, watching TV, and my grandmother fell asleep. When my grandmother fell asleep, I guess he found that it's his time to try to get me out the room. And so he tapped on me to come in the living room. And when we went in the living room, that's when he began to do sexual things to me. I remember at that point, it was penetration. So he began to do sexual things to me. And then at some point, my grandmother got up, came in the living room, and I remember her saying, like, "What are y'all doing? What's going on?" And she then took me from the living room and put me back in the room. And he had his own room. So she told him to go in his own room, I believe. And she felt weird about that. I remember her telling my mom about that situation. I was scared. At that moment, I was scared. I don't know why. I felt like I was in trouble. I felt like I was the one in trouble, and I was scared, even though, he was the older cousin and he was the one who told me to come in the living room. I remember going on like family trips and stuff like that. Anytime he would get a chance to touch me, he would. When I was about 12 or 13, I got pregnant. And at that time, I believe I was in 7th grade. And I don't know, because I was just a kid. I don't know how I knew that I was pregnant, but I just felt like very, very sick. I felt like I had the flu, like I was just dying inside. My stomach was hurting. I would get hot flashes, and I just felt very, very sick. And I remember even one day being in school and asking the teacher if I could go to the bathroom because I felt really sick, like I was about to throw up. And the teacher actually said no, but I remember getting up and leaving anyways because I just felt like I was about to puke everywhere. So I wound up getting up, going to the bathroom. Before I could even make it to the bathroom, I threw up everywhere. Whenever I was about 12 or 13, in that same incident, whenever I was pregnant, I remember, just thinking about my period and knowing that, of course, when you get pregnant, you don't have a period. So that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about that I haven't had my period. I feel really sick. And even being so young, I just felt like I was pregnant. I remember knowing that I was pregnant, and I would always, I don't know if this was the reason for what happened, but I would always go into my mom's bathroom, and I would always take different medicines and pills, any pills or anything that I seen that said, don't consume while pregnant. I used to take the pills. I just used to take them. One day I woke up and it was like, I was all hot all over. My body was it felt so weird. And I just had this urge to go to the bathroom. And when I went to the bathroom, I felt like an urge to push. And so when I was in the bathroom, I pushed, and it was like a whole bunch of blood and tissues and, body tissues. And it was just like a lot of different things, blood clots coming out of me. And so that's when I knew, that I was pregnant. And then I pushed something out, and soon after that, I believe I had my period again. And at that point, I didn't tell anyone. I still hadn't told anyone. I remember digging in the toilet and taking out all of the weird stuff. Like it was like a big ball of human tissues. And so I remember taking this big thing and putting it in the bathroom trash. It was crazy. At that moment, I felt like, I don't know, I could have died. I was sad, I was angry, but not sad for losing the baby. At that moment, I just wanted my period. I was like, if I don't get my period, I'm gonna be in trouble. It was on and off. Whenever he graduated, he actually moved out of my mom's house and went and stayed with another one of our aunts. And so he was actually gone. He wasn't living with us at the time. But anytime with family events, anytime he would see me, anytime that I was around him, he would be doing weird things to me. So from the time I was about 11 until the time I was about 15, when I got pregnant with my daughter, that's when he molested and abused me. I've always been an outgoing person. I've always been funny. People always wanted to be around me. And I've always been smart. I always got good grades. When this happened to me and I was pregnant for the second time, I came home with 5 F's on my report card. And my mom lost it. She's just thinking, she didn't know what was going on. So she's thinking, you're just in school, just doing nothing. It was like night and day. I've always got good grades. I've always had honor roll. So when I came home with 5 F's on my report card, it was alarming for her. I remember even reaching out to the person who molested and abused me. And I remember telling him that I thought that I was pregnant. And it was scary because he didn't really care. He just didn't want his name involved. When I was 15, I remember my aunt was going out of town and to the beach. And last minute, she decided to take me and my younger sister with her. Instead of us going home, she's like, you can go to the beach with us. And I remember going to the beach, but I felt so sick. Like when I was 12 or 13, when I got pregnant the first time, I felt like that, but it was like horrible. Like it was even worse than the first time. I felt really, really sick. I felt like I was gonna throw up all the time. I had hot flashes. When I stood up for too long, I felt like I was gonna pass out. I was pregnant for 9 whole months and nobody knew. It was different socially. When I was pregnant, I actually had a fight. I was going through a lot socially. A lot of people didn't like me. I don't know if it was because I was pregnant. I don't know. But I know a lot of people didn't like me. I wound up going through principal to principal transfer, switching schools because I was getting suspended so much for having altercations with people. I didn't really have that many people that I could talk to because when you're going through something real life like that, you can't really relate to the other kids in that way. I had something, I was on a different level at that moment because I had other things that I was thinking about. My stomach did get big, which everybody was, some people would say things like, I remember being in church and the girl asking me, are you pregnant? I'm like, no, but I was. Some people would say things like that to me, but I was a heavy-set girl, so, I didn't get that much. I would just wear baggy stuff like hoodies and, sweaters, stuff like that, stuff that I could hide my stomach with. It really was April 9th that everything started. So I remember being at school and just having really bad pains. I could barely stand up for my whole pregnancy, but this moment I could barely sit down. It was like I remember being gassy. I remember having pains, which now I know to be Braxton Hicks. I remember going through a whole lot of different symptoms in class. And I remember one of the teachers asking me like, what's wrong with you? And I couldn't sit down, just going through a lot, standing up, while she's teaching, because I didn't know if I was going in labor right then, but I just knew I couldn't sit down for nothing. It was really hard at that moment. And I remember when I did go home after school, it was terrible. Like for the whole day, I was in the room, in bed, laying down, getting up and down, up and down, up and down. It was like every few minutes, and now those contractions. Every few minutes, I would get up and I would be in a lot of pain. And all throughout the night, it was just terrible. I remember it was just late to the point where everything was quiet. Nobody was up. Everybody was asleep. I was the only one up and I was hurting so bad. And how I got to the hospital is I just called the ambulance. I was so scared at that moment to even tell my mom that I was pregnant. I wound up getting out. I was waiting on the ambulance. At that point, I told my mom that I called the ambulance, but I didn't tell her why. So at this moment, I'm waiting on the ambulance. Mom was like, why did you call the ambulance? She was just confused, like, why you didn't just tell me and take you to the hospital? She was confused. She didn't know what was going on. And so, which I did tell the person who answered the phone, the 911 dispatch, I did tell them that I was pregnant. I did tell them that I thought I was going in labor. Told them how old I was. I told them, they was asking different questions. And so the lady told me to lay down and just wait, and the ambulance will be there soon. And so when I heard the ambulance, I wound up getting up off the couch because she told me to lay down. And so whenever I heard the ambulance, I did get up and I went outside. The people were speaking to me, and I was telling them that I was pregnant and that I felt like I was going into labor, and my mom didn't know. I told them my mom didn't know, and I asked them, could they tell her for me? And so I remember the man, I wouldn't say in and out of consciousness, but I was just in so much pain that I couldn't even, I could just tell him that much. And after that, I was just in and out. It was just a lot going on. My body was going through so much pain that I was kind of like in and out. Whenever my mom came down the hill, I could hear her voice and I could hear the man speaking to her. And I remember him telling her, your daughter's going into labor. It looks like she's going into labor. And my mom was very confused. She's going into labor. She didn't know nothing about pregnancy. She didn't know nothing about anything. The pain was like something like your period pains times like 100. So it was just terrible for me. They get me checked in. They do say that I am in labor. And so they wind up taking me into my room. As my family arrived, everybody's coming up. Everybody's like very confused. My mom is continuously asking me, well, who is it? Who's the dad? Who's the dad? She's trying to figure out, what's going on. And he, which is my older cousin, he wound up coming to the hospital as well. He came to the hospital and everybody was there. I wound up having my daughter, and it was crazy. Everybody was just confused about when and how, and so wound up having my daughter. I stayed in the hospital maybe about 3 days, and I remember on that last night that I stayed at the hospital, me and my mom, we wound up getting into an argument, and well, not really argument. She just wound up like cursing me out because she just didn't know what was going on. I remember lying to her. I did lie at first, and I told her that it was this guy from school, and she just was wanting to know, okay, it's this guy from school. Where is he? Who is he? She's wanting to know the details because it's a baby. Like, it's not like I just said that I'm pregnant. It's a baby like right now. So she's trying to figure out exactly what's going on. And so she winds up, getting upset with me and just naming people like, okay, like, who is it? She started naming family members. And I remember her naming him, and I just wound up telling her that it was him. And she was shocked. She was really shocked. She wound up calling the whole family, of course. After that, she wound up pressing charges. He never got charged for the molestation that happened when he lived in my house. He only got charged for when I got pregnant, which was because at first, whenever everything happened, they could do like a conception thing of when I got pregnant. And I always felt like I got pregnant on my little cousin's birthday. And he wound up getting only statutory rape of a person 4 years or more, something like that. I forgot what the charge was, but it was something to that effect, which wasn't very long at all. But how it was explained to me is that when he got out, I could pursue charges all over again. But at that time, I was like, when he got out of jail, I was like 20, and it was just, at that time, it was really hard for me. At that time, when he got out of jail, around that time, it was really hard for me. I didn't really want to go back down that road. I didn't want to have to deal with that at all. So I just kind of left it where it was. And I just didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to deal with it. And so whenever he got home from jail, I would say that's when my mental state kind of took a turn. I remember around that time, that's when I got diagnosed with my mental health issues. I have PTSD. I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, borderline personality disorder, and it was like, it just was terrible. It was terrible. I was going through a lot. I actually wound up going, and I stayed in a hospital for my mental issues overnight for a day, and that's when I got diagnosed. I actually got diagnosed from going in the emergency room because I was going through so much one day that I kind of went insane. I think something happened. I can't think of the specific thing right now. Something happened, and it upset me so bad. I had to go to the hospital because I just felt like I was having a breakdown. And so when I went to the hospital, they wound up doing tests, and I spoke to a therapist, told them about everything that happened to me, and that's when they diagnosed me. So whenever I had my daughter, I just of course, I really, as a kid, I thought about giving away my daughter because I was confused. I kind of felt like, oh, if I just, give her away to a different family, then I wouldn't have to worry about it. And that didn't wind up happening. I wound up just keeping her, and my mom helps me out a lot. My stepdad helps me out a lot. I do have a boyfriend who helps me out a lot. I met him soon after that. And so I have a lot of help. So I wound up being a young parent. I sometimes get really, really, I hate to say crazy, but I get really impatient. I overreact to things. I am a person who thinks on impulse. Like, I have really bad road rage. That's just an example, but when things happen, I overreact. And how the doctor explained it is that when things happen and they could be small, and in like a normal person's mind, it could be very small, but in my mind, it's like really big, and so it affects me in that way of making life decisions and choices, like being in college. I wound up dropping out. It affects me in everyday life, honestly. It affects me in everyday life. God helps me a lot. I have tried therapy. I tried therapy kind of when it first happened. After probably about a year of therapy, I wound up not going anymore. But I pretty much am like unmedicated. I just kind of roll with the punches. Now I'm 25. I am a teacher's assistant. So I went to school for about 2 years, which got me enough credits to be able to work in the school system as a teacher's assistant. I just started this job probably about a month and a half ago, and I love it. It's a really good job, and I actually get to work with my mom, which I love, and so it's a really good job. I love it. It's been definitely brought peace to my life working with kids and being able to, be that adult that I feel like at that age that I would want to go to, you know what I mean? And so this is definitely brought a lot of light to my life. My daughter is now 9 years old, and she's in 4th grade. She's really smart. She's a beautiful child. And so that brings a lot of light to my life as well. And I have been with my boyfriend now for about 9 years. I actually met my boyfriend when my daughter was about 4 or 5 months. And so he definitely helped me out a lot too. He's the only person besides you, and now whoever watches this, who I've told my story to. And so he's helped me a lot with coping, keeping myself on track. I don't trust nobody around my child. My boyfriend has like brothers. I can't. If they times where they come and spend the night, I can't have my daughter in her room. She has to come in the room with me and sleep. I don't really trust men at all when it comes to my child. I be feeling like people are sneaky. It kind of is so mind messing. I've been with my boyfriend for about 9 years now. I have not had a child by him yet. I feel like what happened to me caused me to be infertile, and I hate to take it back, but whenever I was pregnant, some things came out, and my mom said something about him having diseases or something. Some girl coming to them about him having diseases or something like that, which of course, like now I don't have anything. I don't have anything that showed after I had my child, but I do feel like that I am infertile because of, I don't know if it's from having a miscarriage at a young age and not getting medical care, because I didn't get medical care after that. It's very upsetting because my boyfriend is like my high school sweetheart, and I've been with him for 9 years, and I can't have a child, I feel like. And it's like, it really pisses me off because that cousin is like that. It seems like he's living his life right now. He speaks about it a lot. He wants to have kids, and I feel like it's just so unfair to him because he's been with me for a long time, and he's been that father figure to my daughter, and here it is. I feel like we can't even have kids together. I don't know, I would be happy to, but it just doesn't seem like it's gonna happen. We've been together for a long time. So I would say to get treated for any mental issues that you have, not to be embarrassed and to speak about it, because you never know if you could help someone else out. I just wish that I was comfortable to tell anybody what was going on to me. I wish that I was comfortable to tell my mom, or to tell even my stepdad, my one of my other cousins, or my aunt, anybody. I wish I could have told anybody what was going on. And sometimes I do beat myself down about that, because I feel like if I would have told, whenever it first happened, that first pregnancy, that it wouldn't have been the second. I feel like, because of, not because of my child, but because of what happened to me, my life is definitely a lot more difficult, than it would be if it didn't happen to me. I feel like I would be a lot further in life.